Well, today we come to Genesis chapter 20 through 23. And think about the promises that God has made to Abraham all throughout this narrative about Abraham's life. In Genesis chapter 12, we see the first mention of the promise, of the covenant that God makes with Abraham, that he's going to bless all people on earth through Abraham. And at this point in Genesis chapter 12, Abraham is 75 years old. In Genesis chapter 15, we see a restatement of this promise, and a promise that he is going to send a son, and his descendants are going to be as numerous as the stars in the sky. Well, in Genesis chapter 15, Abraham at max was 85 years old, because we see in the next chapter, in Genesis 16, that Ishmael was born to him at 86 years of age. In Genesis chapter 17, the promise that God makes to Abraham is reiterated. And we see here that in this chapter that Abraham is 99 years old. And then we finally come to Genesis chapter 20, where Isaac was finally born, the son of Abraham. And Abraham was 100 years old. So understand that these few chapters cover 25 years of promise that God made to Abraham, 25 years of waiting. Isaac is finally born. Isaac grows up a little bit. And after all of this, all these promises, all this waiting, God tests Abraham. And so let me read to you Genesis 22, verse 1 through 3. Genesis 22, beginning in verse 1. After these things, God tested Abraham and said to him, "Abraham, here I am," he answered. "Take your son," he said, "your only son Isaac, whom you love, and go to the land of Moriah, and offer him there as a burnt offering on one of the mountains I will tell you about." So Abraham got up early in the morning, saddled his donkey, and took with him 2 of his young men and his son Isaac. He split wood for the burnt offering and set out to go to the place God had told him about. Now, how old was Isaac at this time? Isaac couldn't have been any old, he wasn't a young kid is what I'm trying to say. He probably a young teenager, maybe even a young man, because in verse 6 we see that Abraham laid the wood on him. So he had to be old enough to be able to carry the wood up a side of a mountain. But the one thing that Abraham wanted most was a son, a descendant. He didn't want, the Eleazar, his servant, to be his heir. The one thing he wanted. And God says, "I want you to go and sacrifice it." When he goes up the mountain, and we see where God spares Isaac, as Abraham raises the knife to kill him, he stops Abraham and he provided a ram to offer up his worship. You see, when you and I are saved, Jesus is to become our master. Our life is to be about him. Our life is to be about what he wants. We are to sacrifice our life for him. And oftentimes what we do a lot of times is we want Jesus to be a part of our life, to fit among the other boxes of our life when he needs to be the master of all of our life. He wants every bit of you. And the problem is, a lot of times we'll say, "Well, Jesus, there's this one thing that I just love more than anything else, and I'm going to do that regardless, or I'm going to hold on to that regardless." And will we love him if he takes that one thing away? Will we love him enough to sacrifice that one thing? Can we truly say in our hearts, "I surrender all"? Hope you join me again tomorrow.